Hey folks, I'm excited to share some stories with you today that I've written myself. Whether you're a long-time follower or just joining us, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these tales. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe if you're new here. Let's dive in, and I hope you enjoy. I found a satanic cult on the dark web. I was promised to meet Satan. I met someone who is much worse. Hey everyone, this is going to be a bit long, but I need to get this off my chest. If you're not into disturbing stuff, I suggest you stop reading now. For those of you who are, I hope my story serves as a warning. I guess I should start by saying that I've always been a curious person. You know, the type who always has to dig deeper, who can't just leave things alone. It's probably a character flaw, but it's who I am. This particular trait led me to the dark web, a place I had heard whispers about, but never really explored. I was always fascinated by the hidden parts of the internet, the places most people never go. It started harmlessly enough, browsing forums and looking at things I probably shouldn't have. But then I stumbled upon a community that piqued my interest. It was a forum that required a special invite to join, something I received through a shady contact I'd met on a hacker forum. The name of the forum was The True Path, and it billed itself as a gathering place for those seeking enlightenment. I thought it was some kind of new age spiritual thing, maybe a bit fringe, but nothing too crazy. Boy, was I wrong. After getting access, I quickly realized this wasn't your typical forum. There were threads on black magic, ritual sacrifices, and discussions about summoning demons. At first, I thought it was all a joke, just some edgy role-playing stuff. But as I read more, it became clear that these people were dead serious. One thread in particular caught my attention. It was titled, "The Ultimate Sacrifice, Meeting the Dark Lord." The original poster claimed that by performing a series of rituals, you could summon Satan himself. The catch, you had to kill a baby as part of the process. I was horrified, but also morbidly fascinated. It seemed too outrageous to be real. The instructions were detailed and disturbing. They described how to abduct a baby, perform the ritual, and what to expect during the summoning. The OP even included pictures and videos as proof of previous successful attempts. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like something out of a nightmare. Despite my initial revulsion, I couldn't stop reading. There was a part of me that wondered if it was real, if there really was something out there beyond our understanding. I started lurking in the forum, watching as others shared their experiences and asking questions. The community was tight-knit and wary of outsiders, but I managed to gain their trust by participating in discussions and sharing my own experiments. Over time, I became more involved. I started performing smaller rituals, things that seemed harmless, but were unsettling nonetheless. I lit candles, drew pentagrams, and chanted incantations in a language I didn't understand. Nothing happened, but it fueled my curiosity even more. Then one day, I received a private message from the forum's administrator. He said he'd noticed my dedication and wanted to invite me to an exclusive group within the community. This group, he said, was for those who were serious about seeking true power. He called it the Inner Circle. To join, I had to prove my commitment. He gave me a task: perform a ritual and send him a video as proof. The ritual involved sacrificing a small animal, a cat or a dog, and using its blood to draw symbols on the floor. It was a test to see if I was willing to go further. can't believe I'm admitting this, but I did it. I found a stray cat, took it to an abandoned building, and performed the ritual. It was the most horrifying thing I'd ever done, and I felt sick to my stomach afterward. But I sent the video, and a few days later, I was accepted into the inner circle. The inner circle was even more twisted than the main forum. Members shared stories of their sacrifices, discussed dark magic, and planned real-life meetups. It was a breeding ground for the worst kind of evil. I was in too deep, and I knew it, but I couldn't pull myself away. That's when things took a turn for the worse. The administrator sent me another message, this time with an invitation to a live event. He said it was a rare opportunity to witness a major ritual, one that would bring us closer to true power. The event was happening in a remote location, and I was given instructions on how to get there. I was both terrified and exhilarated. This was what I had been seeking, the ultimate experience. I knew it was dangerous, but my curiosity got the better of me. I packed a bag, took some time off work, and set off for the location. The journey was long and eerie. I drove for hours through desolate roads, the GPS signal cutting out as I got closer. Eventually, I reached an old rundown farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. There were other cars parked outside, and I could see figures moving around inside. I parked and walked up to the house, my heart pounding in my chest. As I got closer, I saw that the people inside were wearing dark robes and masks. They looked like something out of a horror movie. One of them approached me and handed me a robe and mask, instructing me to put them on. I did as I was told and followed them into the house. The interior was dimly lit by candles, and the air was thick with the smell of incense and something metallic. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and there was an altar at the center of the room. On the altar was a bundle wrapped in cloth. The leader of the group stepped forward and began chanting in that same strange language. The others joined in, their voices rising in a chilling harmony. As the chanting grew louder, the leader unveiled the bundle on the altar, revealing a baby. My blood ran cold. This was it, the ultimate sacrifice. I was about to witness the most horrific act I could imagine. The leader raised a knife, and for a moment I thought about running, about trying to stop them, but my feet were rooted to the spot. I was paralyzed with fear and morbid curiosity. The leader brought the knife down, and the baby's cries were silenced. Blood pooled on the altar, and the chanting reached a fever pitch. I felt a cold wind whip through the room, and the candles flickered. The air grew thick and oppressive, and I could barely breathe. Suddenly, the room went silent. The leader turned to us and said, in a low, menacing voice, "He is coming." My heart pounded as I waited, every nerve in my body on edge. But instead of the figure I expected, something else appeared. The air shimmered, and a dark shape began to form. It was tall and menacing, with eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. It wasn't Satan. It was something much worse. The creature spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It told us that we were fools, that we had no idea what we had summoned. It said it was the true master of darkness, and we were now its servants. The air grew colder, and I felt a deep primal fear unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I wanted to run, to escape this nightmare, but I was frozen in place. The creature's eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a wave of despair wash over me. It was as if it was feeding on my fear, growing stronger with each passing second. Then just as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature vanished. The candles flickered back to life, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The leader of the group looked shaken, and the others were whispering among themselves. I knew then that we had made a terrible mistake, one that we couldn't undo. I left the farmhouse that night, my mind reeling from what I had witnessed. I knew I could never go back to that place, never return to the inner circle. But the damage was done. I had opened a door that should have remained closed, and now I had to live with the consequences. I don't know what that creature was, or what it wants, but I can feel its presence even now. It's always there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. I can only hope that sharing my story will serve as a warning to others. The dark web is not a place for the curious or the faint of heart. It's a gateway to something far more sinister, and once you step through, there's no going back. I barely slept after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the creature's piercing gaze, felt its icy presence creeping into my bones. The images of the ritual haunted me, the baby's lifeless body and the blood-soaked altar replaying over and over in my mind. I tried to bury myself in normalcy, going to work and pretending everything was fine, but I was constantly on edge, jumping at shadows. A few days after the ritual, I received a message from the administrator. He congratulated me on my participation and welcomed me as a full member of the inner circle. He said that what we had witnessed was a rare privilege, that we had connected with a power beyond our comprehension, but there was no mention of the creature, no acknowledgement of the terror we had unleashed. I couldn't bring myself to reply. I was done with that group, done with the dark web, but it wasn't done with me. I started receiving strange emails and messages, not just from the forum, but from unknown sources. They contained cryptic warnings, references to the ritual, and chilling threats. Someone, or something, was watching me. One night, as I was trying to relax in front of the TV, I heard a noise outside my apartment. It was a soft scraping sound, like something sharp being dragged across the wall. My heart raced as I crept to the window and peeked outside. In the dim light of the street lamp, I saw a figure standing across the street, partially obscured by the shadows. It was wearing a dark robe, similar to the ones from the ritual. I backed away from the window, my hands shaking. I knew then that I was being hunted. Whether it was the creature or someone from the inner circle, I couldn't tell. But I had to do something. I couldn't just wait for whatever was coming. I decided to go to the police. I knew it was a long shot, but I needed to tell someone. I gathered all the evidence I had, the messages, screenshots from the forum, and even the video of the ritual, and went to the nearest precinct. As I recounted my story to the officer on duty, I could see the skepticism in his eyes. He probably thought I was crazy, but he took my statement and said they'd look into it. Days passed with no word from the police. The strange occurrences continued. I found symbols etched into my front door, symbols that looked eerily similar to those used in the ritual. My phone would ring in the middle of the night, the caller always hanging up as soon as I answered. I was being driven to the brink of insanity. Then one evening, I received a call from a blocked number. I hesitated before answering, my heart pounding in my chest. A cold, familiar voice came through the line. It was the leader from the ritual. He said that the creature was angry, that it felt betrayed by us. He told me that the only way to appease it was to perform another sacrifice, this time a human adult. He gave me a list of names, people I was supposed to hunt down and kill. I felt sick. There was no way I could do that. But the leader's voice was insistent, almost desperate. He said that if I didn't comply, the creature would come for me, and it wouldn't be quick. It would be slow, torturous. I hung up, my mind racing. I knew I couldn't go through with it, but I also knew I couldn't ignore the threat. I decided to disappear. I packed a bag with essentials, withdrew as much money as I could, and left my apartment. I drove aimlessly for hours, avoiding main roads and populated areas. I didn't have a plan, but I knew I had to get as far away as possible. For weeks, I lived like a fugitive. I stayed in cheap motels, never the same place twice. I used cash for everything, avoided using my phone or credit cards. But no matter how far I ran, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I turned a corner, I expected to see that dark-robed figure lurking in the shadows. One night, as I was holed up in yet another dingy motel, I heard a knock on the door. My heart stopped. No one knew I was here. I grabbed the knife I kept by the bed and approached the door slowly. "Who is it?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's me, Jason," came the reply. It was a friend from work, someone I hadn't seen since I'd disappeared. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by suspicion. How had he found me? I opened the door a crack, peering out at him. He looked normal, but there was something off in his eyes, a glazed, distant look. "How did you find me?" I asked, my grip tightening on the knife. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We've been looking for you. You need to come back. It's the only way to make things right." I felt a cold dread settle over me. "Who's we?" I demanded. He stepped closer, and I could see the dark symbols etched into his skin, barely visible under his collar. "The inner circle. We've been chosen to serve. You can't run from this." I slammed the door shut and locked it, my mind racing. They had found me. There was no escaping this. I could hear Jason pounding on the door, shouting for me to come out. I knew I had to act fast. I grabbed my bag and climbed out the window, landing awkwardly in the alley behind the motel. I started running, not caring where I was going, just needing to get away. Jason's voice echoed behind me, but I didn't look back. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I found myself in an abandoned industrial area, the buildings looming like silent sentinels. I ducked into one of the empty warehouses and collapsed against the wall, trying to catch my breath. As I sat there in the darkness, I felt the weight of my situation pressing down on me. I couldn't keep running forever. I had to find a way to end this, to break free from the nightmare. But I didn't know how. The creature, the inner circle, the darkness, they were all intertwined, and I was trapped in the middle. I took out my phone and typed a message to an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, but who might be able to help. "I'm in trouble. Need a place to stay. Call me." I sent the message and waited, the darkness closing in around me. I didn't sleep that night. Every noise, every shadow seemed like a threat. My phone buzzed early in the morning, startling me. It was a reply from my old friend Mark. He was the kind of guy who always had his ear to the ground, always knew someone who knew someone. If anyone could help me, it was him. "Got your message. Meet me at the old diner off Route 52. Be careful." I wasted no time. I slipped out of the warehouse and made my way to the diner, constantly looking over my shoulder. The drive was nerve-wracking. Every car that passed made my heart race. Every unfamiliar face seemed like a potential threat. When I arrived at the diner, Mark was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee. He looked older, more worn out than I remembered. As soon as he saw me, he motioned for me to sit down. "You look like hell," he said, his voice low and concerned. "You have no idea," I replied, glancing around the nearly empty diner. "I'm in deep, Mark, deeper than I ever imagined." I told him everything, from the dark web forum to the ritual, to the creature, to being hunted by the inner circle. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing grimmer by the minute. "Jesus, man, what the hell did you get yourself into?" he finally said, leaning back in his seat. "This isn't just some online bullshit. You've stumbled onto something real and dangerous." "I know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to do. I can't keep running." Mark sighed and rubbed his temples. "I might know someone who can help. There's a guy, a sort of paranormal investigator. He deals with this kind of stuff. His name's Alex. I'll give him a call. See if he can meet with you." I nodded, feeling a small glimmer of hope. "Thanks, Mark. I don't know what else to do." "Just hang in there," he said, pulling out his phone. "We'll figure something out." While Mark made the call, I tried to calm myself, sipping on a cup of coffee that tasted like ash. The diner's mundane atmosphere was a stark contrast to the chaos of my life. It felt surreal, like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Mark finished the call and turned to me. "Alex will meet you tonight. There's a bar on the outskirts of town, the Rusty Nail. He'll be there around 9 p.m. Be careful getting there." "Thanks, Mark," I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "I owe you one." "Just stay safe," he replied, his concern evident. "This isn't something you should be dealing with alone." I left the diner and spent the day lying low, moving from place to place, trying to stay out of sight. When night fell, I made my way to the Rusty Nail, my nerves frayed and my paranoia at an all-time high. The bar was a dive, the kind of place where no one asked questions. I found a dark corner and ordered a drink, keeping my eyes on the door. As 9 p.m. approached, a tall, thin man with sharp features and piercing blue eyes walked in. He scanned the room before his gaze settled on me. He walked over and sat down without a word. "You must be Alex," I said, trying to hide my anxiety. "And you're the guy who stirred up a hornet's nest," he replied, his voice calm and measured. "Mark told me about your situation. It's bad, but not impossible." I felt a flicker of hope. "What do I need to do?" Alex leaned in, his expression serious. "First, you need to understand that you've opened a door to a dark and powerful force. It's not something that can be easily closed, but there are ways to protect yourself, to fight back." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small leather-bound book. "This is a grimoire, a book of spells and rituals. It's old and powerful. There are things in here that can help you, but they come with risks. You need to be careful." I took the book, feeling its weight in my hands. It felt both ominous and reassuring. "What kind of risks?" "The kind that can backfire if you're not careful," Alex said. "But right now, it's your best shot. The creature you summoned is tied to you through the ritual. You need to sever that connection, weaken its hold on you." He opened the book to a marked page and pointed to a complex diagram. "This is a protection ritual. It will create a barrier around you, making it harder for the creature to find you. but it's just a first step. You'll need to follow up with more powerful rituals to break the connection completely. I nodded, absorbing the information. I'll do whatever it takes. Alex looked at me with a mixture of pity and determination. I hope you're ready for this. It's not going to be easy, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. But if you're serious about surviving, you need to commit fully. I am, I said, my voice firm. I can't keep living like this. Good, Alex replied. We'll start tonight. Follow me. I followed Alex out of the bar and into the night, clutching the grimoire tightly. The darkness felt heavier than ever, but for the first time, I had a glimmer of hope. I was no longer alone in this fight. We drove in silence to a secluded cabin deep in the woods. The air was thick with tension, and my mind was racing. I clutched the grimoire, its ancient leather cover cool against my sweaty palms. Alex parked the car and turned to me, his eyes intense. This place is warded against dark entities, he said. We'll be safe here while we perform the ritual. I nodded, following him inside. The cabin was sparse but cozy, filled with the scent of burning sage. Alex began setting up immediately, drawing intricate symbols on the floor with chalk and lighting candles in a precise arrangement. I watched, trying to steady my nerves. Sit in the center, Alex instructed, pointing to a spot within the circle of symbols, and place the grimoire on your lap. I did as he said, feeling a strange mix of fear and anticipation. Alex stood outside the circle, chanting in a language I didn't recognize. The air grew heavy, and the candles flickered wildly. I felt a cold, creeping sensation, like invisible fingers brushing against my skin. As Alex's chanting reached a crescendo, the symbols on the floor began to glow faintly. I felt a pressure building around me, a tangible force pushing against the barrier of the circle. My heart pounded in my chest, and I struggled to keep my breathing steady. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appeared at the edge of the circle. It was the creature, its eyes burning with malevolent intent. It couldn't cross the barrier, but its presence was palpable. I could feel its anger, its hunger. Alex's voice grew louder, more commanding. The creature snarled, its form shifting and writhing. I gripped the grimoire tightly, feeling the power within its pages. The protection ritual was working, but it was clear this was only the beginning. The creature lunged at the barrier, its claws raking against the invisible shield. The force of its attack sent a shockwave through the circle, causing the candles to flare. I could see the strain on Alex's face as he continued to chant, his voice unwavering. I closed my eyes, focusing on the grimoire. I needed to trust in its power, in Alex's expertise. The creature's attacks grew more frantic, but the barrier held firm. Slowly, its movements became less aggressive, its form less defined. After what felt like an eternity, the creature let out a final, agonized wail and vanished. The pressure in the room lifted, and the candles returned to their steady glow. Alex's chanting ceased, and he let out a sigh of relief. "You did well," he said, his voice hoarse. "The protection ritual worked. The creature is weakened, but it's not gone. We need to move quickly to sever the connection completely." I nodded, still shaken but determined. "What do we do next?" Alex took a deep breath and opened the grimoire to another page. "This next ritual is more complex and dangerous. It will require a sacrifice of your own blood. We need to break the bond formed during the initial ritual and banish the creature permanently." I swallowed hard, my fear returning. How much blood are we talking about? Enough to form a new bond, Alex said, his tone serious, but not enough to endanger your life. It's a delicate balance. I nodded, steeling myself for what was to come. I'm ready. Alex handed me a small ceremonial knife. Cut your palm and let the blood drip onto the symbols. Focus on your intent to sever the connection and banish the creature. I took the knife, my hand trembling. With a deep breath, I made a shallow cut across my palm. The pain was sharp, but manageable. Blood welled up and dripped onto the glowing symbols, sizzling as it made contact. Alex began chanting again, his voice even more powerful than before. The symbols absorbed the blood, their glow intensifying. I could feel the bond with the creature straining, like a taut rope ready to snap. The air grew cold once more, and I sensed the creature's presence. It was weaker, but still dangerous. I focused all my energy on breaking the bond, willing the creature to be banished from my life forever. The symbols on the floor pulsed with light, and I felt a surge of energy course through me. The creature let out a guttural scream, its form flickering like a dying flame. Alex's chanting reached a fever pitch, and the room seemed to vibrate with power. With a final, desperate howl, the creature was sucked into the floor, the symbol's ceiling shut behind it. The air around us grew still, the oppressive darkness lifting. I collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. It's done, Alex said, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The bond is broken. The creature is banished. I looked up at him, tears of relief streaming down my face. Thank you, Alex. I don't know what I would have done without you. He nodded, offering a small, tired smile. You're safe now. But remember, the dark web and its dangers are still out there. Be careful where your curiosity takes you. I left the cabin feeling lighter. The weight of fear and paranoia finally lifted. The drive back was serene, the sun rising on a new day. I knew my life would never be the same, but I was grateful to have survived the ordeal. As I reached my apartment, I took a moment to reflect on everything that had happened. I had faced unimaginable horrors, but I had also found strength and resilience I didn't know I had. The dark web had opened a door to a nightmare, but with Alex's help, I had managed to close it. I knew I had to be more cautious to avoid the temptations of the unknown, but I also knew that I could face whatever came my way, armed with the knowledge and experience of what I had survived. The darkness had been banished, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. The weeks following the final ritual were a blur of relief and readjustment. I tried to slip back into a normal routine, but the scars of my ordeal were not easily forgotten. My nights were still plagued by occasional nightmares, but the oppressive presence that had haunted me was gone. I stayed in touch with Alex, who checked in regularly to ensure I was doing okay. He became more than just a mentor in the paranormal. He became a friend, someone who understood the darkness I had faced. His guidance and support were invaluable as I rebuilt my life. One evening, as I was settling into bed, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from an unknown address. My heart raced as I opened it, fearing the worst. But instead of a threat or a cryptic message, it was a simple note from Alex. Subject: stay vigilant. Hey, just wanted to remind you to stay vigilant. The dark web is still out there, and there are always new dangers. But remember, you're stronger than you think. Take care, Alex, I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. Alex's words were a reminder of how far I'd come. and how much I had endured. I closed the email and set my phone aside, determined to focus on the positive aspects of my life. As time passed, the nightmares became less frequent, and I found myself smiling more, reconnecting with old friends, and even starting a new hobby, photography. Capturing the beauty of the world around me helped to remind me of the light that existed beyond the shadows. One day, while out on a photo walk in a local park, I bumped into Mark. He looked healthier and more relaxed than the last time I'd seen him. We decided to grab a coffee and catch up. "So, how have you been?" he asked, genuine concern in his eyes. "Better," I replied. "A lot better, thanks to you and Alex. I feel like I can finally move on." Mark nodded, sipping his coffee. "I'm glad to hear that. You went through hell, man, but you came out stronger." We chatted for a while longer, reminiscing about old times and discussing future plans. It felt good to talk about normal things, to laugh and share stories without the weight of fear hanging over us. As we parted ways, I felt a renewed sense of optimism. I knew the dark web and its horrors would always be out there, lurking in the shadows, but I also knew that I had the strength and knowledge to face whatever came my way. A few months later, I received an invitation to a photography exhibition. One of my photos had been selected for display. It was a picture I'd taken during a particularly beautiful sunset, the sky painted in vibrant hues of orange and pink. The image represented a new beginning, a testament to my journey from darkness into light. At the exhibition, I stood by my photo, listening to people's comments and feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. A middle-aged woman approached me, her eyes filled with curiosity. "This is a stunning photo," she said. "There's something so hopeful about it. What inspired you to take it?" I smiled, thinking back to everything I had endured. It's a reminder that no matter how dark things get, there's always light to be found. We just have to look for it. As I walked home that evening, the city lights twinkling around me, I felt a deep sense of peace. My encounter with the dark web had changed me, but it hadn't broken me. I had faced the darkness and come out stronger, more resilient. I knew there would always be shadows lurking at the edges of my life, but I also knew I had the power to keep them at bay. With each step I took, I moved further away from the horrors of the past and closer to a future filled with hope and possibility. And so my story ends, not with fear, but with a promise to live each day to the fullest, to cherish the light, and to never let the darkness consume me again. There is something much worse than the Red Room. It's called the White Room. Hey everyone, I've been debating whether to share this for a while now. It's been haunting me, and I feel like I need to get it out. Maybe someone here has experienced something similar, or at least can help me make sense of it. What I'm about to tell you is not just some creepy story I heard. It's something that happened to me, and it's real. So, about a year ago, I was browsing one of those obscure forums that cater to thrill seekers and those with an interest in the darker corners of the internet. You know the type. Urban legends, weird conspiracy theories, and the like. I'd always had a morbid curiosity about such things, though I never really believed most of it. But there was one thread that caught my eye, titled The White Room. At first, it seemed like a joke or some kind of urban legend. People were talking about this place called the White Room, saying it was far worse than the infamous Red Room. For those who don't know, the Red Room is supposed to be this live stream where people get tortured and killed. Sick stuff. Obviously fake. But the White Room was supposedly something else entirely. It wasn't about physical torture. It was about breaking your mind. I should have just clicked away, but I didn't. There was a link posted by someone with a cryptic username. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. It led to a plain white website with a single line of text. Enter at your own risk. Below it, there was a box to enter your email address. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me, and I typed in my throwaway email address. Almost immediately, I received a message. The email was strange, written in broken English, and it contained only a date, time, and an address. No other information. My heart was pounding as I stared at it, but I convinced myself it was some kind of elaborate hoax. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread mixed with curiosity. I had to know. The date was a week away, and the address was in a part of the city I wasn't familiar with. I spent the next few days obsessing over it, trying to find any information I could about the White Room. There was nothing concrete, just vague references and more horror stories. People who entered were never the same. Some went missing, others were found dead under mysterious circumstances. It was all so absurd, yet terrifyingly alluring. The day finally came, and I found myself standing in front of an old rundown warehouse. The windows were boarded up, and the whole place gave off a vibe that screamed, "Stay away." But I was too far gone to turn back. I took a deep breath and walked up to the door, which was slightly ajar. Inside, it was eerily quiet. The air was thick with dust, and I could barely see in the dim light. I followed a narrow hallway that seemed to go on forever until I reached another door, stark white, standing out against the decayed surroundings. There was a keypad next to it, and my heart sank as I realized I had no code. But as if sensing my thoughts, my phone buzzed. A new email, this time with a single number, 4213. My hands were shaking as I typed it in, and the door clicked open. Beyond the door, I was greeted by blinding white light. As my eyes adjusted, I saw that the room was completely white. Walls, floor, ceiling, everything. It was disorienting. There was a single chair in the center and nothing else. I stood there, unsure of what to do, when a voice crackled through hidden speakers. "Sit." I hesitated, but then slowly moved to the chair and sat down. The moment I did, restraint shot out, locking my arms and legs in place. I tried to scream, but a metallic band clamped around my head, covering my mouth. Panic set in as I struggled, but it was no use. The voice spoke again, calm and devoid of emotion. "Welcome to the White Room. Your experience begins now." Suddenly, the walls around me began to shift, and I realized they were screens. Images started to flash, scenes of violence, disturbing imagery, things I can't even begin to describe. It felt like hours passed, though it could have been minutes. The images morphed and twisted, each one more horrifying than the last. My eyes burned, and my mind felt like it was being shredded. Then the images stopped, and the room was silent again. I thought it was over, but then the voice spoke once more. Phase 2. The chair I was in began to tilt backward, and the ceiling above me opened to reveal another room. I was slowly lifted through the opening, and as I passed through, I saw that the walls here were lined with mirrors. It was disorienting to see infinite reflections of myself. My restraints released, and I stumbled to my feet. but something was wrong. The reflections didn't move with me. They had lives of their own, mocking me, contorting their faces into grotesque expressions. I backed away, trying to find an exit, but the mirrors surrounded me. Every direction I turned, there I was, twisted and nightmarish. I don't know how long I was in there. Time seemed to lose all meaning. Eventually, I collapsed, my mind unable to handle the terror anymore. That's when the floor opened up beneath me, and I fell. I woke up outside the warehouse, disoriented and drenched in sweat. I don't remember how I got home that night. The whole experience felt like a nightmare, but the bruises on my arms and the gashes on my wrists from the restraints were real. Since then, I've been plagued by nightmares and hallucinations. I see those twisted reflections everywhere I go. I can't look at myself in the mirror without seeing those grotesque faces staring back at me. I tried to find that forum again, but it's gone, vanished without a trace. I'm sharing this as a warning. There is something out there far worse than the Red Room. If you ever come across anything about the White Room, stay away. For the sake of your sanity, stay away. I've been trying to piece together my life since that night, but it's like I'm living in a waking nightmare. The White Room has left its mark on me, and every day feels like a struggle to hold on to reality. After sharing my experience in part 1, I received a lot of comments, some sympathetic, some skeptical, and a few outright dismissive. It didn't matter. I knew what I went through was real. But then, a message arrived in my inbox that sent chills down my spine. It was from someone with the username The Witness. Meet me. I have answers. The message included an address and a time. It felt like another trap, but I needed to know more. I couldn't keep living in fear, haunted by those reflections and the memories of the White Room. So, I decided to go. The address led me to a small, nondescript cafe on the outskirts of the town. I arrived early, scanning the room for anyone suspicious. Eventually, a man in his late 30s walked in, looking just as paranoid as I felt. He spotted me and approached, his eyes darting around as if he expected something to jump out at any moment. "Are you the witness?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded, sliding into the seat across from me. "I read your post. I know what you went through. I've been there." My heart pounded. Finally, someone who understood. "What is the White Room? Why is it doing this to us?" The witness leaned in closer, his voice low. "It's not just a place. It's a psychological weapon, designed to break minds, to fracture reality. The people behind it are experimenting with fear, trying to find ways to control and manipulate people through their deepest terrors." I shivered, remembering the images, the mirrors, the voices. But why? What's the point? He glanced around nervously before continuing. "Power, control. They're testing ways to induce paranoia, to break down a person's psyche until they're vulnerable to suggestion. The White Room is just one of their tools." We talked for hours, and he shared his own harrowing experience. The details were different, but the torment was the same. He mentioned something about Phase 3, a level of psychological torture so severe that most don't survive it. Those who do are left as hollow shells, mere shadows of their former selves. Before we parted ways, he gave me a small flash drive. "This has everything I've managed to gather about them. Be careful. They're always watching." I took the drive home and plugged it into my laptop. The files were a mix of documents, videos, and audio recordings. There were notes about various experiments, details about victims, and even some names of those involved. It was overwhelming, and I felt like I was being pulled deeper into a dark abyss. One video, in particular, caught my attention. It showed a man in a white room, similar to the one I had been in, strapped to a chair, screaming as the walls closed in around him. His cries echoed in my mind long after I closed the file. That night, I had the worst nightmare yet. I was back in the white room, but this time, it was different. The walls were covered in shadows that seemed to move on their own. They whispered to me, voices of people I knew, telling me things I didn't want to hear. Accusations, lies, truths, everything blending together in a cacophony of madness. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart racing. But the worst part was the shadows. They were still there, lingering at the edges of my vision, moving just out of sight. No matter how much I tried to convince myself it was just a dream, they felt all too real. Days turned into weeks, and the shadows only grew stronger. They whispered constantly, their voices becoming clearer, more distinct. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye, figures that disappeared when I turned to look, faces staring back at me from mirrors. I was losing my grip on reality, and I knew I needed help. But who could I turn to? The police would think I was crazy, and therapists wouldn't believe me. The witness had warned me to be careful, but I was desperate. In one of the documents on the flash drive, there was a name, Dr. Amanda Harper, a psychologist who had once worked with trauma victims of experimental treatments. According to the notes, she had gone underground after exposing unethical practices at a high-profile research lab. If anyone could help me, it was her. Finding her wasn't easy, but I managed to track down a former colleague who reluctantly gave me her contact information. I reached out, and to my surprise, she agreed to meet with me. Dr. Harper was a stern woman in her 50s, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through me. I told her everything, from the initial email to the white room, and finally, about the shadows. She listened intently, taking notes. When I finished, she leaned back, her expression grave. "You're not the first person to come to me with a story like this. The White Room is part of a much larger, more sinister project. They're using advanced psychological techniques to push the boundaries of human fear and sanity." "But why?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What do they hope to achieve?" "Control," she replied simply. "By breaking you down, they can rebuild you in their image, make you susceptible to their influence. It's a form of mental conditioning, and it's very effective." She offered to help me, though she warned it wouldn't be easy. The process would involve confronting my fears head-on, facing the shadows and the voices without flinching. It was the only way to reclaim my mind and my life. I agreed, and thus began the most harrowing journey of my life. Each session with Dr. Harper was a battle against the darkness that had taken root in my mind. We delved into my deepest fears, the traumas that the White Room had exploited. It was painful, both physically and emotionally, but slowly I began to see progress. The shadows started to fade, their whispers growing fainter. I learned to distinguish reality from the hallucinations, to ground myself in the present. It was a long, agonizing process, but I was determined to fight back. Then one night, everything changed. I woke up to find my bedroom door ajar, even though I was certain I had closed it. A cold breeze wafted in, sending chills down my spine. I reached for the lamp, but the bulb flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. And then I saw them, figures standing at the foot of my bed, barely visible in the dim light. They were silent, watching me with eyes that glowed faintly. My heart raced, and I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The figures moved closer, and I realized they were not just shadows. They were people, or at least they used to be. Their faces were twisted, their bodies contorted, as if they had been broken and reshaped. They were the victims of the White Room, those who hadn't made it out. One of them stepped forward, and I recognized him. It was the witness. His eyes were filled with sorrow and pain, and his voice was a whisper. "They're coming for you. You have to stop them." I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. It was just a dream, I told myself, but it felt so real. The next day, I tried to contact Dr. Harper, but she didn't answer. Her phone was disconnected, and her office was empty. Panic set in as I realized the implications. They had found her, and now they were coming for me. I was running out of time, and I needed to find a way to stop them before it was too late. I didn't know who to trust anymore. Dr. Harper had been my only hope, and now she was gone. The shadows were back, stronger than ever, and I felt like I was on the verge of losing my mind again. But the witness's warning echoed in my head. You have to stop them. I spent the next few days in a state of constant paranoia, jumping at every sound, every flicker of movement. I knew I had to act fast, but I didn't know where to start. Then I remembered the flash drive. There had to be something in those files that could help me. I went through the documents again, more carefully this time. Most of it was disturbing, detailing experiments and psychological torture. But one file stood out, a list of names. It included researchers, subjects, and locations. I recognized one of the addresses. It was near the outskirts of the city, not far from where I'd first encountered the White Room. It was a long shot, but I had to try. I gathered what little courage I had left and drove out to the address. It was another abandoned building, this one looking more like a decrepit office complex. The windows were shattered, and the walls were covered in graffiti. It looked like a place where nightmares were born. As I approached, I noticed a single light on in one of the upper floors. My heart raced as I entered the building, the air thick with the smell of mold and decay. The elevator was out of order, so I took the stairs, each step echoing ominously in the silence. When I reached the floor with the light, I found a single door slightly ajar. I pushed it open, revealing a room filled with old computers and filing cabinets. In the center of the room sat a man hunched over a desk, his face illuminated by the glow of a monitor. He looked up as I entered, his eyes widening in surprise. "Who are you?" he demanded. I'm looking for answers," I stammered. "About the White Room." His expression changed from surprise to something darker. "You shouldn't be here. They'll find you. Please," I begged. "I need to know how to stop them." He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. They're not just scientists. They're part of something much bigger. They have connections, resources. They're untouchable." "Then why are you here?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. He looked away, his shoulders slumping. "Because I'm trying to atone for what I've done. I was part of it, one of the researchers. I didn't realize how far they'd go, how many lives they'd destroy. When I tried to expose them, they came after me. I've been hiding ever since." "Then help me," I pleaded. "Help me stop them." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right. There's a way, but it's dangerous. You'll have to go back into the White Room, confront your fears head on." If you can survive that, you might be able to destroy their system from the inside. The thought of returning to the White Room made my blood run cold, but I didn't have a choice. I had to face it, for my own sanity, and to prevent others from suffering the same fate. He handed me a small device, no bigger than a USB stick. This will disrupt their systems, but only if you can get it into the main control hub. It's located in the heart of the White Room. Once it's in, the whole operation will collapse. I took the device, my hands trembling. How do I get back in? He gave me another address, this one in an industrial area on the other side of the city. Go there. They're always watching, always looking for new subjects. They'll take you in. I thanked him and left, my mind racing with fear and anticipation. The drive to the industrial area was a blur, and before I knew it, I was standing in front of another nondescript building. It looked abandoned, but I knew better. I approached the door, and as I did, it swung open. 2 men in white lab coats stood there, their expressions unreadable. "You're late," one of them said. Without a word, they led me inside, through a maze of hallways and into a stark white room. It was just as I remembered, blindingly bright, with a single chair in the center. They strapped me in, and I felt a sense of déjà vu, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice crackled through the speakers again. "Welcome back." The images started flashing, but this time I was ready. I focused on the device in my hand, waiting for the right moment. The images grew more intense, more horrifying, but I held on, my mind anchored by the knowledge that this was my chance to end it. Then the walls shifted, revealing a control panel on the far side of the room. It was now or never. I broke free of the restraints, the adrenaline coursing through me, giving me strength. I sprinted to the panel, plugging the device into the main port. The room shuddered, the images flickering and distorting. Alarms blared, and I knew I had only seconds before they would come for me. I pulled the device out and smashed it against the panel, sparks flying as the system overloaded. The door burst open, and the men in lab coats rushed in. But it was too late. The White Room was collapsing around us, the walls cracking and crumbling. I fought my way out, the building shaking as if it was about to implode. I made it outside just as the entire structure began to cave in, dust and debris filling the air. I stumbled to my car, barely able to breathe, and drove away without looking back. I don't know how I survived, but I did. The shadows are gone, the voices silenced. It's over, for now. But I can't shake the feeling that they're still out there, lurking in the darkness, waiting for their next victim. If you ever hear about the White Room, don't ignore the warning. Stay away, for the sake of your sanity. Stay away. I hope this is the end, but in this world, you can never be too sure. It's been months since I destroyed the White Room, and while I'd like to say my life has returned to normal, it hasn't. The nightmares have lessened, and the shadows no longer haunt me, but the scars run deep. I still jump at sudden noises, and I avoid mirrors as much as possible. The White Room may be gone, but the fear it instilled in me is far from eradicated. I thought I was free, that I had put an end to their twisted experiments. But then, 2 weeks ago, I received another email. It was from an anonymous sender, with no subject and just one sentence in the body. You can't stop what you don't understand. Attached was a video file. My hand shook as I clicked on it, my heart sinking as the familiar white walls appeared on my screen. It showed another person in the White Room, strapped to the chair, undergoing the same psychological torture I had endured. This time, though, the room was different. It seemed more advanced, more sinister. I felt a surge of anger and helplessness. Despite everything, they were still operating, still torturing people. I needed to find a way to stop them for good. I reached out to the witness again, but his email bounced back. I tried every contact I had, but no one could give me any answers. Desperation led me back to Dr. Harper's abandoned office, hoping to find some clue she might have left behind. The building was as empty as before, but I noticed a hidden compartment in her desk that I hadn't seen before. Inside was a notebook filled with her notes and observations. Flipping through the pages, I found something that made my blood run cold. References to the Black Room. According to Dr. Harper's notes, the Black Room was the next phase in their experiments, a level beyond the White Room. It was designed to push the boundaries of human fear and sanity even further, with a focus on complete psychological domination. The victims would be stripped of their identities, their minds reshaped to serve whatever purpose the experimenters had in mind. I had to stop it before it went any further. I spent days researching, trying to find any lead, any clue. One night, I found a hidden message embedded in one of the documents from the flash drive. It was an address, much like the one that led me to the White Room. This time, it was in a remote area, far from the city. Armed with the knowledge from Dr. Harper's notes and the determination to end this once and for all, I set out to find the Black Room. The drive was long and arduous, the road winding through desolate landscapes. As I approached the address, I found myself at the entrance of an old, seemingly abandoned asylum. The place was eerie, its looming structure casting long shadows in the fading light. I took a deep breath and entered, the air thick with dust and decay. It felt like walking into a nightmare, every creak and groan of the building amplifying my fear. Inside, I followed a maze of hallways, each one leading deeper into the heart of the asylum. The walls were lined with old, rusted medical equipment and broken furniture, remnants of the horrors that had occurred here in the past. My footsteps echoed ominously, reminding me of the ever-present danger. Finally, I reached a door marked restricted. It was reinforced, with a keypad beside it. I pulled out the notebook, hoping Dr. Harper's notes contained the code. After several tense minutes, I found it. 8,351. I punched in the numbers and the door clicked open. The room beyond was dark, but as I stepped inside, motion sensors triggered the lights. The walls were black, and the air was colder than the rest of the building. In the center was another chair, this one more menacing than the one in the White Room, with multiple restraints and wires snaking out of it, connecting to various machines and monitors. I approached the control panel on the far wall, my hands trembling as I navigated the system. The complexity of the setup was overwhelming, but I managed to find the main control hub. I inserted another device, similar to the one the witness had given me, hoping it would have the same effect. As the device activated, the monitors flickered and the room shook. I heard footsteps approaching and panic set in. I turned to leave, but the door was blocked by two figures in lab coats. Their expressions were cold, calculating. "You really thought you could stop us?" one of them sneered. I backed away, my heart racing. "You have to stop this. You're destroying lives." The other figure stepped forward, a twisted smile on his face. "We're advancing science, pushing the limits of the human mind. Sacrifices must be made for the greater good." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "This is madness." Before I could react, they lunged at me, and a struggle ensued. I fought with everything I had, adrenaline fueling my desperation. I managed to knock one of them out, but the other grabbed me, forcing me toward the chair. In a last-ditch effort, I kicked the control panel, sending a surge of electricity through the system. The lights flickered wildly, and the machines began to smoke. The man holding me yelled in anger and pain as the room descended into chaos. I broke free and ran, not looking back as the building began to collapse around me. The sound of alarms and crumbling walls echoed in my ears as I made my way outside. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, my body trembling with exhaustion and fear. As I drove away, I saw the asylum implode in my rearview mirror, a cloud of dust and debris rising into the sky. It was over. The black room was gone, but as I sit here writing this, I can't shake the feeling that it's not truly over. The people behind the white room and the black room are still out there, waiting for their next opportunity. I may have destroyed their tools, but the threat remains. So I'm sharing this as a final warning. Stay vigilant. If you ever hear whispers of the white room or the black room, run. Don't let curiosity pull you in like it did me. For your sake, for your sanity, stay away. I don't know what the future holds, but I'll keep fighting, keep searching for answers, and if they ever come for me again, I'll be ready. I have to be. I thought I had put an end to the nightmare, but deep down, I knew it wasn't over. The fear, the paranoia, it was all still there, lurking beneath the surface. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see those darkened halls, hear the whispers of the lost souls trapped in the white and black rooms. A few weeks after the destruction of the asylum, I received a letter. It was unlike the emails I had gotten before. This was handwritten in a neat, precise script. It simply said, "Meet me at the old warehouse. We need to finish this." There was no signature, no hint of who might have sent it, but I recognized the location. It was the same place where my journey had begun. I felt a mix of dread and determination as I made my way there. If this was going to be the end, I needed to face it head on. The warehouse looked as decrepit as ever, the air thick with dust and decay. I walked through the familiar narrow hallway, my footsteps echoing ominously. At the end, the white door stood ajar, as if inviting me in. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was empty, except for a single figure standing in the center. It was the man who had tried to stop me at the asylum. He looked haggard, his face lined with stress and anger. As I approached, he turned to face me, his eyes burning with intensity. "Welcome back," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've caused quite a bit of trouble for us." "I had to stop you," I replied, my voice steady. "What you're doing is monstrous." He shook his head, a bitter smile on his lips. "You don't understand. This is about more than just you or me. It's about pushing the boundaries of human potential, exploring the depths of the mind." "At what cost?" I demanded. "You're destroying lives, breaking people beyond repair." He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "Sometimes, sacrifices are necessary for progress, but you've become a thorn in our side. It's time to end this." Before I could react, he lunged at me. The struggle was intense, both of us fueled by desperation and anger. We grappled, crashing into the walls, the sound of our fight echoing through the empty room. He was stronger than he looked, but I fought with everything I had, refusing to let him win. At some point, we stumbled into a hidden control panel. In the chaos, I noticed a series of switches and buttons that seemed to control the various functions of the white room. My heart pounded as I realized This could be my chance to finally end it all. With a surge of adrenaline, I broke free from his grip and slammed my hand down on the main switch. The room shuddered and the lights flickered wildly. Alarms blared and the walls began to shake. The man yelled in fury, trying to stop me, but it was too late. The system was overloading. I managed to push him away and ran towards the exit. As I did, the walls of the White Room began to collapse. Chunks of debris falling all around. The entire building was coming down, and I had to get out before it buried me alive. I burst through the door just as the ceiling caved in behind me, the sound of destruction roaring in my ears. I ran, not stopping until I was far from the collapsing warehouse. The ground shook, and a cloud of dust rose into the sky as the building imploded, the remnants of the White Room finally destroyed. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, my body trembling with exhaustion and relief. It was over. The nightmare was finally over. In the days that followed, I began to rebuild my life. The shadows were gone, the whispers silenced. The fear still lingered, but it no longer controlled me. I had faced my demons and survived. I kept the flash drive and Dr. Hopper's notebook as a reminder of what I had been through. Occasionally, I would read through them, remembering the horrors of the white and black rooms, but they also served as a testament to my resilience, to the strength I had found within myself. I have shared my story here, not just as a warning, but as a testament to the human spirit. We are stronger than we realize, capable of facing unimaginable horrors and coming out the other side. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, remember that you are not alone. There are others out there who have faced the darkness and survived. The White Room may be gone, but the threat remains. Stay vigilant and never stop fighting. For your sake, for the sake of those who have suffered, and for those who might come after, we must stand together against the darkness. This is my story, and I hope it serves as a beacon of hope for anyone who finds themselves lost in the shadows. Remember, no matter how dark it gets, there is always a way out. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and never give up. The end is not the end. It's just the beginning of a new chapter. Stay safe, everyone. And if you ever hear whispers of the White Room or the Black Room, run. For your sake, stay away.